Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 401 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, just yesterday on the podcast, we were talking about how a solid support system, such as fraternities and sororities, can help protect against things like depression and stress-related diseases. Our next guest is going to talk about Latinas and how many women and their needs are often overlooked in terms of their needed support systems for the sake of men and other cultural gender expectations. Now, as a trigger warning on today's episode, we are going to be talking about addiction. We're going to be talking about eating disorders. We're going to be talking about sexual abuse. So now let me introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Priscilla María. She is a keynote speaker, a certified trauma recovery coach, and the founder of the Cycle Breakers Club LLC. She talks about breaking cycles of generational trauma, mental health, and Latinx identity. She earned her BA in both Africana Studies and Sociology at Johns Hopkins University and her Juris Doctor from UC Irvine School of Law. She is a certified speaker for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI. She believes in the healing power of storytelling and hopes to bring mutual healing through shared testimonies. Her unique professional and lived experience helps her partner with clients to explore ways to release generational trauma from their life patterns and their bodies, increase work-life balance and strengthen their voice at work, discover their purpose and their passion, overcome limiting beliefs and fears, and set effective and measurable goals. Welcome to the show, Priscilla.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on here.
Yeah, this is a really important conversation. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect over social media, and then I could learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And I want to make sure that we give voice to people that have gone through these lived experiences. I think that's super important for college students to hear, that they're not alone, that there are other people that have had these similar types of experiences. And, today we're going to talk a little bit about ACEs, which is an adverse childhood experience. Many students on college campuses today have had this trauma early on in their life. And same thing goes for you. As a young child, you were sexually molested by your grandfather, and this trauma had a huge impact on your life. Tell our audience about how this impacted you as a child and even into young adulthood.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. So that I would describe as my most influential trauma, if you will. Unfortunately, I've experienced quite a few traumas, but that was like the core one that almost shaped me, because I was 8 and 10, the times that I do recall. And at those ages, you're still learning about the world. That's how your safety of the world is beginning to be constructed. You're learning about yourself barely. I mean, you're a baby. And so when you have something that is so shocking and numbing and conflicting, like someone that person was a father figure to me. So it wasn't like an estranged relative. This was like right after my dad in my eyes. So it was earth-shattering. And I did not even know what happened to me until years later. And so I would say once I started to realize that I had been molested, I was about 13. And then I did not speak about it openly to my family until I was 19. And so for many years, I would cry myself at night. I would go in circles and be like, was I molested? Was I not molested? Am I like just being dramatic or things like that? And so that looked like definitely affected my intimate relationships with men friendships with men were non-existent. I was very easily activated by the presence of men that I didn't know. And that looked like aggression, that looked like misplaced anger towards my grandfather to men that in most cases hadn't done anything to me. And so a lot of those instances happened when I was at Hopkins. So when I was a college student. And that's why I'm so passionate about this age group, because this age group, if I had someone talk to 18-year-old Priscilla, they could have really broken through to me if it was like the right person with the right message.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, we do everything to try to be a resource for our younger selves, if that makes any sense. And so, I do want to talk to you a little bit about Latinas. I think this is really important because niños are taught to blindly respect their elders and esteem the family unit over your individual needs. Latinas, however, are taught self-sacrifice over self-care. They're taught to take up very little space. So, what have you learned over time in terms of what loyalty really is and what a healthy expression of loyalty looks like?
That's a great question. So definitely growing up, it might help to add more background about my family.
Yeah.
So neither one of my parents came to the States voluntarily. So for different reasons, my father was a refugee from a warfare in Nicaragua. My mother it was a case of parental kidnapping. My grandmother took my mom and my aunt away from an abusive father. And so I definitely grew up with the mentality of survival. I did not grow up in the hood. I did not grow up in poverty. The only taste that I got of being low income was when I was like a very small girl. But it was ingrained in me that you can only trust your family. You can't trust anybody. People are, are kind of out to get you. And so I grew up with this idea that, okay, my family is everything. And I have to trust them, especially your elders. You always have to respect them. And that's what was so painful with my grandfather, because again, he was not estranged. This is someone that traveled with us, that lived with us, that was always around. I mean, I loved him. I adored him. And so when he did that, I was like, but every time I was talked to about like people touching you, it's more of like strangers or like the boogeyman.
Mhm.
So I could not reconcile a father figure doing that. And then how do I hold him accountable if he's my elder and someone that I respect and everyone else respects? And so it's very conflicting. And one more side of my story is that I did tell someone when I was 10, a family member, about this. And unfortunately, that person denied it and said that it didn't happen. And that was it. It was never talked about, which is very on par with, unfortunately, a lot of Latino families. And once I became older and I had a conversation with this person, and they actually opened up as to why they had this reaction. And part of it was I was afraid of what would happen to my grandfather. Was he going to be put in prison? Was he going to be put out on the streets? Would what would happen to you? And so I want to say less because I don't want to give away their identity. And so that literally played a role in my experience, because maybe if it were a stranger, there wouldn't have been that same tension and conflict. But because it was, yeah, it was like they had to choose a side, and I guess they didn't choose mine. And so that's just one of many examples of different things that were just ingrained as a Latina. So I can only speak for myself. If you ask my brother his experience, if you ask my uncles, it's different, it's totally different. I can recall growing up, when my brother had his traumatic brain injury, a family member being like, you're his sister. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be like on go, being his caretaker. And I did that. And I developed an eating disorder as a result.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's so much trauma here. I mean, you got generational trauma, you have the trauma with your grandfather, you have adulthood trauma when you're talking about your brother who had drug addiction and had a brain injury. I mean, talk about your experience as a caretaker for your brother a little bit more. And, obviously, you also at the same time are exposing all of the sexism and the patriarchy that dominates these Latinx households.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I've told my brother this, that I always felt like I was the older sister, even though I'm the younger sister by almost 2 years,
Mhm.
because, one of my caregivers told me straight up, I can't treat you the same. He's a boy, you're a girl. So that meant he had way more freedom, just completely different experience. But on the other hand, there were some things that he had to deal with that I didn't have to because I was a woman or a girl. And so when the traumatic brain injury happened, I mean, it was the most earth-shattering trauma. My molestation was the most, like, the core influential one that has impacted me in so many ways, but the most terrifying and nightmarish hell was my brother's traumatic brain injury. He had the brain injury on January, I believe, 14th, 2012. And he was hospitalized probably for like 2 years. The details are a little fuzzy because I didn't want to remember anything,
Mhm.
but it was extreme. We were told he is not going to make it. He has a 0% chance of ever recovering any cognitive function. You are prolonging your agony by entertaining the thought that he would wake up from his coma. And so we were going against all odds. And so I was very much in survival mode. I went to a top university. I landed on Dean's List. I got really good grades while my brother is in a coma. My parents were literally texting, be like, "Oh my gosh, he moved his thumb." And that was like, yes, like, and now I'm in a lecture right now and I have to get back to work, or I have to take my LSAT. And I remember my mom calling me around that time and being like, he just had a seizure, like it was really scary. So it was just like constantly something. I studied for the LSAT in hospital settings next to his bed. So I never stopped being a student. I never stopped being a daughter or a sister. It was just, you have to figure it out. You have to do all of it all at once. And yeah, I for the longest time put my family before myself.
Mhm.
And that was rewarded. That was like reinforced.
So you did it all, and you did so with a blatant disregard for your own self-care, your
Yeah.
own self-esteem, your own boundaries, and ultimately, you mentioned it before, it led to you developing this anorexia and bulimia. I guess for our listeners who are listening right now, how are you still taking care of your family before yourself at this point?
Yeah, so I would say when this happened, I was about 20
Mhm.
and it affected me. His journey has been very long. So it wasn't just the hospitalization, it's like a whole book. So I would say up until maybe my late 20s or 30. I'm 32, by the way.
Mhm.
And that was probably when I really started to learn boundaries and enforcing them. So it's very easy for me to set boundaries with other people, but it's my family. That's like, oh, it goes against everything I've learned. So it looks like me saying no to things and me saying, you know what, I don't think I want to go to every doctor's appointment this week. Or I want to go on a trip and just kind of like take a break, or this is what I'm doing in my personal life, and like, please don't ask me about it until I'm ready to talk about it. So things like that, just setting boundaries, really owning my identity, being way more open about my experiences. There's nothing that my parents don't know about me or my brother at this point.
Mhm.
And so just standing in my own identity as a woman and owning all parts of myself.
Mhm. When college students have this kind of trauma in their lives, many times they turn to alcohol or drugs in order to essentially mask it, cover it up. And so that's kind of at the root of it. When we see a lot of alcohol and drug abuse happening on college campuses, there's usually some kind of root problem that they're trying to cover up and just kind of detach from. And so obviously this is a big issue on college campuses, especially in fraternities and sororities. So, I mean, obviously you're 32 now and you're looking back at your younger life and some of the things that happened to you. If students find themselves wanting sobriety and they want to avoid alcohol and drugs to cover up trauma, what is the best way to achieve that?
Yeah, so I wish I had, of course, hindsight is 2020. It wasn't until I got sober that I found out that Hopkins actually has sober houses and like sober living. I was like, I didn't even know that. And honestly, had I known that, I wouldn't have used the resource, because when you're in college, binge drinking is so glamorized and
Mhm.
so ingrained, like a rite of passage, that it's it's always hard to cut a dependency, but especially drinking for a college student where it's so normal and so readily available. And so if I were to speak to a younger version of myself, I wouldn't even start with the alcohol or eating disorder or sex addiction or gambling, whatever it is, because it's really not that. Those are symptoms of an underlying cause. In my case, it was unresolved trauma. So I would encourage any student listening and any faculty listening to encourage students to be self-curious about themselves, whether it's their self-talk, their self-image, their habits, and start asking yourself, what is the motivation behind this?
Mhm.
So with drinking, many people, I mean, I hear it all the time. Even at this age, it's not exactly the norm to be sober. Um, and it's just like, well, don't you want to have fun? Like, don't you want to go watch the game? I don't know. Just there's 1,000 reasons to drink alcohol. And if someone were to have asked me, why do you drink? What is the purpose? It tastes disgusting. It's not nutritious. You make horrible decisions and you keep doing it regardless of those decisions. Um, I would have said it's because I was angry. And I recall actually being drunk one time and saying, this is so cringe, as they say, the Gen Z. It was like a really large bottle of alcohol. And I just remember saying, like, this is my anger management. And I was like, ew. But you know what? they say drunk thoughts are what the sober mind thinks or whatever. And that's really how I felt. I drank not because I was awkward or anything like that. It was really because I was very angry. And so if someone were to go further and be like, well, why are you angry? And then it's like, okay, let's explore ourselves. Let's examine our behaviors. Let's see what's behind that anger and what we can do about it. Because and I recall a lot of people, binge drinking, and sometimes I wonder about them. I'm like, I wonder if they're okay. Because there's some that you're like, it's looking a little like you might need to like come talk to me. We can get you on reframe.
Yeah, that's really good reflection. I like that a lot. I think it's going to be really helpful for college students to ask themselves those questions that you posed. I think that's going to be a really fascinating exercise for them. I think they're going to learn a lot about themselves. And, obviously, you did all of these things despite all of the trauma and caring for your brother. You still graduated from Johns Hopkins. You still went to UC Irvine School of Law and got your degree there as a lawyer. I mean, talk about time management because a lot of students they struggle with that.
Yeah.
And they struggle on following through on their goals. You managed to reach your goals clearly. So how can they get better at this time management piece?
Thank you for asking that, because as you ask that, I feel like I need to give a disclaimer that I hid behind a mask of academic achievement.
Hmm.
So it was ingrained in me since I was a little girl, I always saw academics as my job. So no matter what, I grew up moving around so many different states, always the new girl, but I'm gonna get those A's. I'm gonna take AP classes. I've now realized that I internalized my father's intense drive to succeed because of his own self-beliefs. He always felt like he had to prove himself. I'm not from this country, I have an accent, people discriminate against me, I'm going to be the best. And so that was really ingrained in my brother and I. And so there was never even an option to not perform well. Yeah, that's like a whole thing in itself. But so that was part of it. But also, no one forced me ever to like go to college or to go to law school. But there's this certain pressure that some children of immigrants or refugees feel, that we need to validate the sacrifices of what our family went through. And there's a lot of trauma, as I just mentioned a few. And so they didn't even need to tell me anything. I just was like, I have to make them proud. I have to make all of this worthwhile, all of this chaos worthwhile. And so on paper, it looks like I had time management skills, but I'm not sure if I did, to be honest. I was not very organized. I really have to think about that, because I've never been a planner. I have that grit and that discipline. All about integrity. I'm going to do my work. This is my work. It's honest work. But it's like on Monday, I'm in class super quiet. I was always super quiet in class, but then come the nighttime, I'm turning up, I'm drunk, I'm fighting. It was like a double life. And so I don't really know how to answer that. I think it was honestly survival mode. I think it was just adrenaline. My brother's on his deathbed. I really have to make my parents' sacrifices worth it, because it's only us two. And yeah, so after I finished and graduated law school and earned my Juris Doctor, I was like, there was this big sense of relief that like, I'm done. I did it. Thank you to my parents. I owe everything to them. They truly did the best they could. But now who am I? And I struggled with that. It's kind of like when you're in any type of stressful situation, when you're in it, you're just on go. I know I have to get this done to survive, so I'm going to get it done. I have an eating disorder, drinking, my self-esteem is in the trash. Like everything else is kind of crumbling. I would faint literally from so much stress. I got hives one time from so much stress. And so once I finished and I was at the finish line, I was like, okay, I can breathe now. Who am I? And I kind of had like this existential crisis at like, how old was I? Like 24 or 25. And that was the beginning of a new journey. So what I would say, kind of is a very long-winded response to, I would encourage students to do what I didn't do and really tap into resources on your campus. Because many times there's writing centers, there's academic advisors, there's support groups, there's a lot. And so I would, again, practice that curiosity that you have towards yourself to your school. Be like, okay, my tuition is this much. Let me make the most of this. Let me use everything that I can that will help me.
That's really good. You talked a little bit about some of the stress and the anxiety, the hives that you were getting because of all the stress that you were under. What are some coping skills or self-care routines that our college students can use when they feel that stress?
Yeah, so when I think about that, I'm just like flashback to being at Hopkins and thinking of all the things that I didn't do. So my nutrition was never healthy. Prior to the anorexia and the bulimia, I was pretty much a binge eater, very unhealthy binge drinker. And so instead of doing that, I think it would have been beneficial to have some type of movement. So I went to the other extreme once I developed that bulimia, and I don't know, trigger warning, I don't really like to talk about eating disorder symptoms, but just in case there's someone out there, I know Kerry Washington spoke about this recently in her memoir. People think that eating disorders are just certain behaviors. For me, it looked like over-exercise. I thought I like cracked the code, like, oh, I can eat like a little bird and then I can work out for 3 hours. I'll never gain weight, I'll lose. So don't do that. Don't go to extremes. With me, I tend to go in the past extremes. I'm either binge eating or I'm not eating enough. I don't work out and now I'm working out for hours at a time. So movement, it doesn't even have to be a workout or exercise, just move your body. It can be yoga, it can be just a walk, it can be a dance class, just something to get, there's so much healing power in moving your body and releasing the tension that our body stores from trauma. Additionally, I would lean on community. Community has been my number one tool throughout this journey. When I was able to start sharing my story and owning who I was, and people weren't disowning me and crucifying me, I was like, oh, I guess I am lovable, I am worthy. And so when I was at Hopkins, I didn't lean into community. I actually essentially isolated myself. I was always off campus because I didn't want any of my professors or classmates to see me drinking and being belligerent. I had to always protect that reputation to get my degree. And so I did not lean into the best support system or the best role models. And so if you want to justify drinking, for example, you can say, oh, well, everyone drinks. That's not true. Everyone that you're surrounding yourself with drinks. So surround yourself with other people. And so I did that towards the end of my college career. I joined different religious groups. We were playing board games on the weekends. I was like, people do that. Last semester, I was hanging out with gangbangers and drug dealers, but I like variety. So it was very different.
Very different from last year with the gangbangers. Oh my goodness. Wow, wow, wow. All right. So, I want to ask you this question because, I've spent some time at the Sexual Assault Center in Nashville, Tennessee. And one of the things I learned is that there's all different kinds of therapy that people go through when they or want to recover from some trauma that they've had. How do you recover from trauma like the ones that you've told us about today?
Wow, it's been a long journey. I would say my first real strong step to recovery was when I was 19. I went to a wilderness program, which in itself is a privilege. Had I not had my parents to care and financially support me, I would have been probably in a different type of facility setting. But it's pretty much an intervention program. It's like the movie Holes. You go out in the desert and you live there for X amount of weeks or months. And so that was kind of the start of it. But I actually left that program more angry and more destructive because unfortunately I learned more family secrets and a lot of more traumatic things. And, nothing seemed to have changed. I came back, my brother's still an addict, getting worse, still things are the same. So fast forward to once I graduated and then, oops, guess I have an eating disorder. So then I had to go to an eating disorder treatment. And even after that, I was still very far in my healing. I forgot to mention another program, forgot about this one, an outpatient intensive program for alcohol. So by the time I was 23, I've been in 3 rehabs and substance support groups, AA meetings. And so it's like, what's going on? And I had been in individual therapy since I was like 17. So something's not really like what's going, I'm not really seeing the results. And so in my case, what was missing was an accurate diagnosis. So I have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, with obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use disorder, and then the eating disorders over the years. Yeah. And so basically borderline encompasses most of those things. And I did not receive that diagnosis till I was like 28, 27. So pretty, my first rehab was 19. It wasn't until 27 that's like, hey, I think you have BPD. And that requires a very specific therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy.
Mm.
And so that pretty much taught me how to manage stress, how to have interpersonal skills, how to set boundaries, how to identify and express my emotions. I felt like I was being taught how to be like a human, like a functioning adult. And so that was very helpful. I also started medication. I was not on any medication in college, which is whoa, it makes a lot of sense of why my college experience looked that way. And that has helped me tremendously, as well as continuing therapy, different support groups. I'm still in support groups. I still attend a weekly support group. I'm still on medication. And so what I would say is explore your options. So there goes that curiosity again. See what works for you. Not everyone works with the talk therapy. Not everyone works with art therapy or equestrian therapy. There's so many types of therapy. See what works for you. If you're in a state where there were points, now I can openly speak about some of the darkest times of my life, but I could not when I was in college. That was very challenging. So if you're in a state where you can't even go there, or your memories are blocked out, you might need to work on healing your body first. So that might look like EMDR, where they really focus on less the details and more on helping your brain stay online and your brain and to be present. And then you start to like activate those memories. And also yoga, movement again, doing things, breath work is amazing for you to calm the nervous system. For the longest time, I thought I was just, and I was told by different people, like, you're loca, you're chola, you're crazy. But I've learned that fight is a valid trauma response. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze. And so there may be behaviors that you're doing right now. It's not because you're broken or you're weird or you're whacked out. It might be because your nervous system is dysregulated. And if you're not ready to talk to anyone, I definitely encourage self-education. So this is a really good book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's like super famous. And start educating yourself. TikTok, Instagram, there's so many resources that I didn't have in college, where so many people are just dropping facts, giving you tips, and pace yourself. And of course, I'm a resource. You can always hit me up and we can talk about it.
Oh, that's really amazing. I mean, thank you for sharing all of that information. I think, it gives people hope. It gives people the ability to know that healing is possible. And I think that's super important that you share your story, because somebody out there is probably thinking, there's no way that I'm going to be able to manage all of this.
Yeah.
But you're giving them the hope that they can, and that's showing them that healing is possible, because you have gotten to the other side of it. It's not to say that you're not still in support groups. You're still going to do that. You're still going to have the medication, all those things. But I'm just so happy that you got the help that you needed. I
Thank
mean,
you.
that's just amazing. That's just really, really good. Now, I have to tell you, I love really good food. Okay. That's like my weakness, is great food. I was just speaking in Tampa Bay. It's beautiful over there. They took me to Columbia Restaurant in downtown Tampa. This restaurant is absolutely incredible. The food is just off the chain. Are there any other restaurants that I should be going to for a great meal the next time I'm in the Tampa Bay area?
That was actually the restaurant that I want
Good.
to try that because
Oh my God, you got to
love,
go.
yeah, I love paella,
Yep.
of any type of seafood. I actually spend more time in St. Petersburg,
Okay.
and I would say I'm more of a mom and pop type of a gal. So there's this place called Special Pho in
Uh-huh.
St. Pete's,
Uh-huh.
and I don't eat meat. So they have this like seafood bowl with pho with different like vegan options. So that's my go-to is Vietnamese pho.
That sounds good. I love Vietnamese food, so I will definitely try that the next time I'm in Tampa Bay. But I tell you what, go and check out Columbia Restaurant in
Yeah.
downtown Tampa the next time you get a chance. You will be very happy that you went. Let me just tell you that the food is amazing. So, listen, this has been really, really great. If our listeners, if they want to bring you in to come and speak on their college campus, where should they go in order to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So first, let me know when you're in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And second, my website is my name, so priscillamaria.com. And then LinkedIn, it's LinkedIn slash or this simple Cycle Breaker Coach.
Yeah.
And then my Instagram is also Cycle Breaker Coach.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you for sharing your story. I know some of this stuff is not easy to talk about, but you and I share that, we're willing to have the difficult conversations if it's going to help somebody else to get through it. And so I'm really happy that you're sharing your story. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor, and I appreciate you having this platform. I would have never thought when I was in college that I would do anything like this. So I'm thankful that our paths crossed.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, listen, to our listening audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Priscilla, make sure that you like it on social media. Make sure you share it with other students that really need to hear her words. And I hope to see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for seeing us, and we will see you next time.